Let's talk about Hatan. Joining us now is Bonnie Glaser, the Managing Director of the Indo-Pacific Program at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Glaser, on the program. It's such a great honor to have you with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
My first questions go to, Lai Ching-te won the presidential election while KMT actually became the majority party in the parliament. So what's your take on this election result?
Well, I think it changes the political landscape in Taiwan. Lai Ching-te has not won a very strong political mandate, certainly not the amount of votes or the percentage of votes that Tsai Ing-wen won in 2020 or 2016. And the DPP has lost its majority in the Legislative Yuan and lost 10 seats. And so this will be a challenging political environment for the new president and his administration. But hopefully there will be some bipartisan consensus on some issues, particularly those that relate to Taiwan's security and defense issues, which I think from the U.S. point of view are very important going forward. We want to see KMT, TPP, and DPP support for a strong defense program.
Well, indeed, but so what kind of challenges that you just point out, especially the political environment? That you said the bipartisan consensus, is that easy to accomplish in Taiwan's environment as you just observed?
Well, of course, it's not easy in Taiwan, just as it isn't easy in the United States. It's really a very polarized political environment. But I don't think it's impossible to forge consensus on individual issues. And again, that's what I hope that the new administration will be able to do with the opposition, to come up with a consensus that they will support increased defense spending, weapons procurement, increased training, the extension of conscription, which of course was already announced by Tsai Ing-wen's administration. There's a whole set of issues that relate to Taiwan's defense and its resilience that I think are very important.
Now, let's also talk about Xiaobi Kim. She has done a very outstanding job as a diplomat. So what changes do you think that she may bring to Taiwan?
Well, ultimately, this will be a discussion between the vice president elect and the president elect of the direction that they want to take the country. And Xiaobi Kim will be supporting President Lai after the inauguration in May. And I think that Lai Ching-te has already said that he wants to continue many of the policies that Tsai Ing-wen has put in place, especially the approach to China, the preservation of the status quo, continuing to strengthen U.S.-Taiwan relations. And I think that there is no better person than Xiaobi Kim to support Lai Ching-te in that effort, because I think that Xiaobi Kim has a very good understanding of the international community and, of course, the U.S.-Taiwan relationship. She will be able to navigate many of the challenges that Taiwan faces in its relations with the rest of the world because of growing Chinese pressure on Taiwan. So I think that she was an excellent choice for vice president. And I think that she'll make very strong contributions to helping Lai Ching-te to realize his visions for Taiwan.
Now, Taiwan Strait is one of the world's geostrategic flashpoints. So what's your take on the U.S.-China-Taiwan triangular relationship, especially after this election?
Well, the U.S.-China relationship, I think, has reached fragile stability in the aftermath of President Biden's meeting with Xi Jinping this past November. And Taiwan was, of course, one of the issues that was discussed. And President Biden, I think, voiced this time and, of course, many times to Xi Jinping that the United States opposes coercion against Taiwan and any use of force against Taiwan. The United States insists that the differences that exist between Beijing and Taipei be settled peacefully. And hopefully Beijing will agree to resume some kind of communication with the incoming government in Taiwan. I hope that Beijing draws some lessons from the last 8 years. I think the absence of communication between the two sides of the strait has led to misunderstanding. It has led to misperceptions, and it could eventually lead to miscalculation. So the U.S.-China relationship is fragile. The cross-strait relationship has been somewhat tense. China has, of course, increased its military activity around Taiwan. It has been squeezing Taiwan's international space and poaching its diplomatic allies, most recently Nauru, just after the elections. And of course, the third side of that triangle is the U.S.-Taiwan relationship, which is a good news story. I think that we have the highest level of mutual trust between Washington and Taipei than we have ever had. And I think this relationship will go from strength to strength.
Now, you just mentioned that the China's attitude toward Taiwan might be more tense, but would it be more intense in the future? Do we see any change that we can expect coming from China toward Taiwan?
The reaction so far from Beijing to Taiwan's elections, and of course the election of Lai Ching-te and Xiaobi Kim, I think has been not beyond our expectations. There were some statements that were made that came out of the Taiwan Affairs Office, and then also the Foreign Minister Wang Yi, when he was in Cairo, made some remarks as well. These are all things that we have heard from Beijing before. In my view, they are somewhat like placeholders. I think even though Beijing has said it's not going to wait and see, it is not going to give Lai Ching-te any real space. Nonetheless, I think that the Chinese will be restrained in their actions against Taiwan because they want to preserve the fragile stability in the U.S.-China relationship, and because they don't want to be so tough against the incoming President Lai Ching-te that they provoke a strong reaction from him, because that could set in motion a very dangerous dynamic where the United States wants to strengthen its relations with Taiwan, support Taiwan more in reaction to provocative moves by Beijing. This is not in Xi Jinping's interest, and hopefully he knows that. So my sense is that we will see some more actions taken by the Chinese side. In particular, I expect that we will see some more of Taiwan's products that have been sold to China tariff-free since 2010 under the Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement. We have seen already 12 of those products have had tariffs reimposed, and I expect we will see more of them. So there will be more economic coercion against Taiwan. But for the most part, other than the Nauru activity of stealing Nauru from Taiwan and increasing economic coercion against Taiwan, I think that Beijing is likely to wait until after the inauguration before we see the full extent of what the reaction from China is to Lai Ching-te.
You just mentioned about the economic coercion. So what about the military actions? Will there be also an increase in that side as well? Can we expect that?
I have heard Chinese experts talk about the possibility of increasing military pressure on Taiwan. We'll have to see what the Chinese do. They've already increased over the last couple of days some of the activity compared to a few weeks prior. But again, in my view, this is not unexpected. The real question, in my mind, is will China do something unprecedented in the military sphere? Operate within the 24 nautical mile contiguous zone, which its Navy ships and its fighter aircraft, as I understand it, have not gone into up to the present. This could happen going forward. I've also heard some Chinese experts say that there could be drones that would fly over Taiwan. These are the kinds of threats that I'm hearing. Whether they will be realized remains to be seen.
Well, we can also see that the Biden administration sent an unofficial delegation to Taiwan right after the election. So what's your take on this?
Well, I think, again, this was fully expected. This is completely in line with precedent. The United States had sent a delegation to Taiwan after Tsai Ing-wen was elected in 2016, and I believe that we did so even before that. Of course, these are two former senior officials. They're not sitting officials. They're very well known to Taiwan. They're close friends of Taiwan. They also are well known by people in Beijing, and I have actually heard some experts, again, scholars, not officials from China, say that this was something that was considered reassuring to Beijing because the messages that they delivered to Taiwan are consistent with U.S. policy and encouraging, for example, that Taiwan, or I should say reminding Taiwan that the United States does not support independence and expressing that the United States opposes unilateral changes in the status quo in the Taiwan Strait by either side. So I believe that Beijing demarched the United States about this delegation, but in practice, I don't think that they viewed it as very provocative.
Now, back to the situation back in Taiwan, we know that the election result shows that there are huge differences within Taiwan. So what's your advice to the newly elected president to resolve this problem?
I think I'm going to leave that up to Lai-Ching-te to solve. This is a difficult challenge for any president in Taiwan. It's also a very difficult challenge for any president in the United States. But it is important to try and forge consensus, as I said, to build some bipartisanship. It is essential, I think, in a democracy to have different parties work together. But Taiwan and the United States are especially polarized. And I think we both need to work on trying to bring our different parties together with a common purpose of protecting security and our interests.
Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us your expertise.
Thank you for having me.